Eagles. Eagles.
Welcome in, everybody, to an Overreaction Monday here on Birds 365. JAKIB Nation, the Philadelphia Eagles are headed back to the Super Bowl, and they did it in record-breaking fashion, dropping 55 points on the Washington Commanders in a game that got out of hand pretty quickly, Johnny Mac. A statement win for the Philadelphia Eagles, and we are headed back to the Super Bowl, John, 2 times in 3 years, and the rematch is upon us. How you feeling on this Monday morning, Johnny Mac?
Doing well. Yeah. 2 and 3 years, Super Bowls, rematch. So everything is set up. A lot of storylines, a lot of ghosts to be slayed. Can you stop one of the great dynasties in pro football history? Try to stop Kansas City from being the first team to win 3 in a row. A lot of storylines to this game.
No doubt about it, man. The storylines are all over the place, man. But John, just first, let's recap, that game last night, man. That's an unbelievable performance that this team just delivered in the NFC Championship. I think easily their best game of the year. The offense clicked better than it has. The defense steps up again. Zach Bond is there anything? Is it possible to be better than an all-pro, John? I mean, this guy is unbelievable, making plays on the biggest stage. Everything was working for the Philadelphia Eagles yesterday, Johnny Mac.
Yeah, from the first offensive play.
Yes.
I mean, I've seen soul stealing from teams at Lincoln Financial Field before in the playoffs. Minnesota, most notably in the 2018 NFC Championship game. If you go back to the wild card round, the Green Bay Packers, Oren Burks opening kickoff separates Keyshawn Nixon from the football. And then, yesterday, first play, crack toss, 60 yards to the house, and you're like, you got to be kidding me with this stuff. It's amazing, the execution, the home run ability of Saquon Barkley. Because, I mean, like I said, I've said it in the past, this has been a great running team for basically the entirety of the Nick Sirianni era. The offensive line is a big part of that, and you see that execution. But the difference now between Saquon Barkley, Miles Sanders, DeAndre Swift, that's probably a 25, 30-yard gain.
Yep.
And then he makes the spin move, and guys can't tackle him, and he breaks away for 60. And right there, I'm obviously a lot of things happened in that game. A lot of points were scored. But in the moment, it felt to me like, all right, that's it. That's it. You just watch Washington go 18 plays, 18 torturous plays, 54 yards. And it was so difficult and so plotting, and 2 fourth downs. And then Dan Quinn laid up instead of going for it, trying to seize the moment, and kicks a 34-yard field goal. And you say, oh, nice little start for the plucky Washington Commanders on the road in a difficult environment. And then one play, it all blows up. One play. And he said, all right. I mean, that was my feeling in the press box. This team can't compete. And that turned out to be the case.
No doubt about it, John. I thought about you for sure when I watched Dan Quinn pull up on that 4th down. I said, oh boy, I know Johnny Mac is going to be grilling him for that one. And it turned out to be just spot on where
the fact that he did it twice on the same drive.
And then you're like, at that point, John, to me, it feels like if you're at the 13 or the 12-yard line or whatever it was, 14 or 15, 16-yard line, that's more of a chance.
Exactly.
Because you're so far into enemy territory at that point. That's what I didn't understand about it, but a costly mistake, John, and then and a couple minutes later, it was 14-3, and it felt like the Eagles had, already were in a commanding control of the game.
Yeah. And like I said, I mean, 3 championship games in 8 years, 3 Super Bowl berths. This is the best era of Eagles football in history. For those who don't know, unless you want to go back to 1949 and 50, with Ray Dinger will take you there. That's a little bit too bad. I'm going Super Bowl era. This is by far the best era of Eagles football. And this was the worst opponent they've had in the championship game. It was, from a talent standpoint, it just was.
Yeah.
But people don't remember Minnesota was a really good team that year. San Francisco was a really good team in 2022, 2023. This was like, this was a nice little story. Big upset against a banged up Detroit team. Things fell, but man, it really unfolded that way.
No doubt about it, John. 55 points and what I think was the best game
championship game record, by the way.
Yeah.
Nobody's ever scored more points in an AFC or an NFC championship game.
Just unbelievable. 50. I joked last night on the post-game show, John. Reminds me of my days at Alabama back when we had Nick Saban and we would put up 55 on Mercer. I'm like, this normally doesn't happen in the NFL, but pretty remarkable. 55 points, John. You just said it. Jalen Hurts, man. I mean, I'm going to just take this time to tip the cap because you talk about his relentlessness, but John, this dude shows up in big moments, man. He is cool as a cucumber, and he delivered, I thought, his best game of the year in the most important game of the year to this point, and I think he deserves credit from even the staunchest of haters. And John, you weren't on the postgame show. Brian Pumper dropped a $50 super chat at the start of the postgame show and said, all right, I will give it to him. Jalen Hurts deserves the love today, man. Unbelievable performance by him.
Even Brian Pumper.
Yeah,
wow.
Even Brian Pumper did it. And look, just your thoughts on QB1, man, doing that in such a big spot, in such a big moment. And you got to think, John, you always talk about the human element of this game, which is very important, especially for a guy like you who covers you know what I mean? It's not just a TV show to you. These are human beings, and it's got to feel good for him, man, to hear everything that he hears about this team and how he's pulled and he's carried and all those things, and to go out there and have that type of performance and that type of impact on the victory. It's got to feel good for Jalen Hurts. Your thoughts on what he was able to do yesterday?
Yeah, I mean, some of that is just silly, and I think Nick said it after the game, and that who was one at Jalen Hurts' level without a good supporting cast?
Yeah, great response by Nick.
And, he brought up Joe Montana throwing to Jerry Rice, and he can throw in Dwight Clark and, everybody else from that era. And if you think about Tom Brady and all the great players, the great defenses, but even on offense with Gronkowski and Edelman and Welker and Randy Moss at one point. It's like, who wins 17 games without a good supporting cast?
Yeah, it's true.
Point that guy out. So yeah, a lot of that stuff. But I can't stand, and you know this, I can't stand whenever, and you'll see it this entire 2-week run up. Jalen Hurts versus Patrick Mahomes. Jalen Hurts. I hate when people boil it down to quarterback versus quarterback, because there's so many other players that will help decide this game coming up. There were so many other players that help it there. Everybody's got it. If you're 17-3 or 17-2 in Kansas City's case, you got a bunch of good players contributing to that, bunch of good coaches. So part of that is baked in. But on the other hand, I'll push back on he gets criticism. Other people, I've always thought that was bullshit. If you're a starting quarterback in the NFL in any city, whether you're good, bad, crappiest, best,
right,
you're under the microscope.
Yeah, I think you are right, but I do I don't know, maybe it's just because I'm so ingrained into the Eagles, but it does seem like there is a different NFL conversation.
Well, I do think there's a part to it that the Eagles fan base is so engaged and so passionate.
Right.
I think there's part of the national media, the people who have the biggest platforms, that say stuff for engagement, that to ignite the Philadelphia fans, to get more viewers, right? To get I mean, I do believe that's true. I do believe that's true. To a certain extent. But overall, you're an NFL quarterback, you're under the microscope. And from a local, because I think it's unfair, and I'll defend us from a local, like, we didn't stand and say passing. What's wrong with it? Passing. We didn't talk about Lane, we're giving you Lane Johnson's words, Jordan Mailata's words, Devontae Smith's words, Jalen Hurts' his own words earlier in the season. So, I mean, what was the difference yesterday? The passing game was clicking. Saquon's been there the entire year.
Right.
That's an average Saquon game, maybe a little above average from a yards per carry standpoint, but 118 yards, you get.
How'd you evaluate Kellen Moore in that game?
Well, I think Kellen Moore was Kellen Moore. The difference is it was successful. Like I said, why the receivers were wide open yesterday.
Right. It did seem like there were different route concepts, John. It did.
Yeah.
Again, I haven't seen the all 22 or anything, so I'm just speaking on what
obviously I have to rewatch the game, but I don't think that's the case. I don't think in game number 20 the Eagles unveiled a bunch of new stuff. The only thing new I saw was that little wrinkle to Dallas Goedert as a runner.
Jet sweep. Sweeps to the big fella. I love that.
But they've done jet sweeps in the past. It's just a different version. Even that's not really new. But just doing it with him. But nobody's sitting back there and say, all right, we're not doing, and I talk about this all the time because people expect that. And my best example of that is James Franklin against Ohio State, 4th and 4, and everybody lost their mind because he ran a zone read play. Well, that's what he practices. That's what he runs.
Right.
You don't sit there and play 19 games. Oh, all right, the 20th game, we're going to run a different bunch of route concepts against the Washington Commanders. No, they were successful. And that's when I always talk about play calls versus play results. No, they're not rolling out new stuff. All of it's been in the offense. Sometimes Billy Special, most famous play in Eagles history, at least modern Eagles history. That was in the offense for 10 weeks. They didn't roll it out, but they had been practicing it for a long time. That's not how football works. You don't just change. And again, the 20th game of the season.
Jalen did seem to, complete passes at a high clip. He was getting the ball out of his hands. A couple moments he held it, but I really thought he had a really good game. John, another guy I want to give credit to for this win and just for this season. And, I feel like he's become a lightning rod as well. And that's Nick Sirianni. I mean, you can collect great talent on football teams. There's been teams that have had great talent in this league many times before. Leading them and getting them to play for you and getting them to play for the guy next to them is a different beast. And you talk about this all the time when it comes to head coaching and how it's a leadership position first. And it's a lot more than X's and O's and play calling. In fact, that's probably the smallest part of it when you're a head football coach. And I think Nick Sirianni deserves a ton of credit, man. This team is clearly plays for the guy next to him, and they play for him. And I think Nick Sirianni deserves a lot of credit.
Yeah, I mean, it's getting to the point. In a lot of ways, he and Jalen kind of mirror each other because for whatever reason, you talk about Coach of the Year. He got asked about that question. Like he doesn't even get considered in those kinds of conversations, which, why? I don't know. I can't speak for the people voting. Could be something as simple as personality. But I mean, when people talk about, well, Jalen Hurts just wins. Well, Nick Sirianni just wins. Same thing. I mean, they just win. They find ways to win football games. And it looks different. He says it all the time. It's going to look different every week. He said, if you do listen to him, and I get it's hard because, when he talked about that, he gave me a great quote with that yesterday. And Connor Barr went to, the burden of leadership is repetition. You say the same thing every time. You drill the same thing every time. And you've heard it time and time again from Nick Sirianni, and people kind of tune it out. but it works to the people he's talking to.
Right.
I mean, you know, his numbers over 4 years are ridiculous. And to the point where we deal with it every day. I mean, let's be honest here. This doesn't happen in other cities. This kind of run, with the exception of Kansas City. It doesn't happen. I mean, I guess people get used to it. This is the third coach in NFL history to reach multiple Super Bowls in his first 4 career seasons.
Man,
he is the first. He is the only coach in the Super Bowl era. The list starts and ends with Nick Sirianni. Make the playoffs 4 consecutive years and make 2 Super Bowls. That's it. Only one who's done it. He's already the first Eagles coach to reach multiple Super Bowls. He's only the 12th head coach to win 17 games in a season. I mean, he can't even get in the top 10 for Coach of the Year award. I don't get it, but because same thing. People will say, "Well, he's got talent." Well, he's got talent. I don't know who these all be all end all.
There isn't any. Andy Reid didn't win a Super Bowl for 21 years until he found Patrick Mahomes.
Andy Reid's got Patrick Mahomes and Travis Kelce and all these Hall of Fame players. He's got talent too. It makes no sense. Obviously you have talent that's baked into it. And by the way, Nick's the first one to admit that. He constantly says, "Show me a good coach, and I'll show you a bunch of good players."
Yep.
But yeah, I mean, he's done stuff certainly that's never been done in Philadelphia, but rarely been done in the NFL. In the case of one instance, again, through the first 4 seasons of a coaching career, no other coach has made the playoffs 4 times and made 2 Super Bowls.
Impressive stuff from Nick Sirianni. John, 2 more things I want to talk to you about, and then we're going to have Jeff Kerr coming up here on Birds 365. John, how about that defense? It's one thing to be the number 1 defense in the NFL in the regular season, but to come into a playoff game and continue to deliver the goods, John. I saw a stat last night that blew my mind. 3 playoff games, 10 takeaways, 0 turnovers.
Yeah.
That's a recipe for success there, John McMullen.
Boy, man. Zach Bond.
I know.
I mean, he's got 7 forced fumbles on the season. He had another fumble recovery as well. The 3 fumbles, I don't know what it is about this team, because there's some randomness to turnovers. But in the case of Zach Bond specifically, I mean, Will Shipley forced the fumble on the kickoff. That's kind of all right. We don't expect that, but he's done it consistently. And they're just able, if you go back to the tone setters, Oren Burks, as I said, stealing the soul. Oren Burks has been great. It's like, who saw that coming? And there's 2 guys who I always say, I've been covering this league for a long time. And usually when guys have big reputations, and by usually I mean 95% of the time, they don't live up to the expectation, because people blow superstars into mythical creatures almost, and they're human beings. And it's almost always not quite as good as people want it to be, almost. In 2 instances this year, Saquon Barkley on the field and Vic Fangio off of it have outperformed their reputations, which is almost impossible because of their reputations.
Right.
And they've done it. it's, people should enjoy this journey, and I know, and I'm going to make a request. I rarely do this, but can we leave the officiating to the other shows? You can go on WIP and complain about that, and they'll validate you. You don't need an excuse. You're the better football team. Go out and beat Kansas City. Go out and stop them. That's it. Stop it. Go out and beat them. But I would say enjoy the journey while it gets to that point.
No doubt about it, man. I'm most excited for the great people of Philadelphia, John. A lot of people live and breathe this team, man. For the people that work the 9 to 5 who, struggle to find some joy in life and love this football team. Those are the people I'm most happy to. For the people who lost their father or their mother and the Eagles make them think of them, those are the people in the city that I'm most excited for because they love this team, John. And it's great for the players and the coaches, and I think they deserve a bunch of credit. But those guys are making millions of dollars. They're good, and it's great for them. But I'm most happy for all the great fans in this city. And we have a lot of them right here on our show. So we appreciate each and every one of you. John, you just brought it up, though. Eagles, Chiefs, Super Bowl 57 becomes Super Bowl 59. The rematch is upon us, Johnny Mac. We're going to have plenty of time to break it down, but what do you think? 2 weeks from now, the Eagles will take on the Chiefs in a Super Bowl rematch.
Yeah, it's a great matchup. Obviously, you have the greatest, one of the greatest. I'm not going to say the greatest because Brady and Belichick exist, but certainly one of the greatest coach quarterback combinations of all time, and Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. You got the Travis Kelce, so the Kelce effect will be involved again, and I'm sure Jason will be involved, and Taylor Swift will be involved. So you have all that hype.
Yeah.
Maybe the two best defensive coordinators in the NFL. And I think you're going to see more hype to Steve Spagnuolo, but I think Vic is better. But
wow, that's really a bold statement there, Johnny Mac.
I don't think it's bold at all. I used to, inside the industry, I used to tell this in the NBA. I used to tell people when Larry Brown was here, Larry Brown's a hell of a lot more respected as a basketball coach than Phil Jackson. People would lose their mind. Phil did a great job, but he went sort of superstar hunting and won a bunch of titles.
Right.
Larry was a kind of a weirdo, a basketball wonk, so to speak, and he just loved teaching people, coaching people. Like inside the industry, Vic's the guy in defensive football. He's been that guy.
Right. Spags has the success recently. Yeah. It's hard to dispute that. I mean, I don't necessarily think he's loaded with superstars. I mean, he's got good players. I'm not saying he doesn't have good players.
I'm not trying to disparage. Spags is great. I'm just saying in the industry, that's not even a conversation. That's all I'm trying to say.
Wow. So Vic Fangio is that respected.
Vic, that's what I'm talking about, his reputation before.
Okay.
How do you live up to that reputation? Well, he did. And he surpassed it here in Philadelphia. But ever since Chicago, I mean, everybody copies Vic Fangio. They don't copy Steve. That tells you, in the industry, when Kyle Shanahan and Sean McVay and Matt LaFleur and Kevin O'Connell and Nick Sirianni talk about who's the most difficult to deal with, they all say Vic Fangio. That's what I'm talking about.
Right. Impressive. I hear you. I know what you're saying. Great stuff, John. Great opening segment here. The Philadelphia Eagles are headed back to the Super Bowl for the second time in 3 years. The Jalen Hurts haters are going to have to be quiet for a little while. The Nick Sirianni haters are going to have to be quiet for a little while. These guys, unbelievable performance yesterday. Really a historic performance. 55 points. I'll say that again. 55 points in the NFC Championship game. Unbelievable. We got some super chats we'll rattle off real quick, and then we'll get to the great Jeff Kerr. Jeff, I see you, brother. We'll get to you in a second. Brian Garner checks in. Vin Diesel said it best in the movie Riddick. Skittish, real skittish. Those are my thoughts after Quinn kicked a field goal on fourth down after converting it twice on the opening drive. Yeah, John talked about that one, Brian. Bad decision there by Dan Quinn.
Really bad. I think it sends just a bad message to your team. And then, it's magnified when Saquon goes off on the
Exactly.
first
Yep.
offensive play. So, yeah, really.
Yeah, and also to go 18 plays and end up with 3. Ugh,
Yeah.
that hurts.
And remember, if you don't get it, you have them backed up inside the 20 at the 16. So maybe
Right.
Saquon goes 84 on the first play. Who knows?
Yeah, right.
But,
who knows?
you're better equipped. So, yeah, I thought it was a catastrophic mistake by Dan Quinn.
Brian Garner again. I now live in the DMV area and drive past Washington's practice facility every morning and engage with their fans all day. It's going to be a great day today. It should be, Brian. They had a great season. I tip my cap to him, Dan Quinn, Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, go easy on them. I mean, it's difficult.
Yeah, but I don't want to hear none of that, John. We are the kings of the NFC until further notice, all right? Niall Christian.
Well, it's going to be a while before they're not kings of the NFC.
That's true. Niall Christian says Dickerson and Cam showed a lot of heart. Agreed, man. Those guys are great.
Yeah, we got our own Cam Jurgens coming up, and Jeff Kerr, who played through pain to get through the NFC Championship game. But
did he? I'll have to ask him about that.
Yeah, Cam. Yeah, I mean, that was something, because that was the whole story pregame, and it became clear he wasn't going to start, and then we're all assuming he's going to be inactive, and he's not inactive. And they dress him as an emergency. And sure enough, Landon Dickerson gets hurt. And by the way, that's something to keep an eye on.
Yes, it is.
He is a tough dude. And the fact that he didn't come back in that game. Now you have the extra week, obviously, so that helps. But that's something to keep an eye on.
No doubt about it. Josh, nope, Man in Black, my bad, didn't read yours yet. If you play like you did, if you play like you just did and tell refs can't control the outcome, plain and simple, if we can play clean in the divisional game, playoff game, we can again.
Oh, yeah. They play like they did. Anybody complain about the official? Well, probably some people, but actually,
yesterday we got. Come on.
Actually, most of the stuff went the Eagles' way.
Yeah, I thought so.
When you beat somebody like a drum, yeah, the officials don't matter. And I saw John Gruden, whatever John Gruden's doing now. I think it's Barstool.
Yeah, it's Barstool. He's hilarious.
So one of the Buffalo fans called up and said, they started complaining. And John was like, and God bless him as a coach. He's like, if you can't get 1 yard, and not 1 yard counting on the official, you're going to get a bad spot. And so basically he said, do better. Don't put it in their hands. How about that? Which I agree with.
Yep, no doubt. Well, last super chat here, then we'll get to the break, get to Jeff Kerr. We're just going to go to the live read, and then we'll get to Jeff. Josh B says, just wanted to shout out J-Mac for helping me find Jacob. A lot of those people, Josh B. J-Mac at question at the press conference always stood out. And one of the times Sirianni said something about Jacob. You're a legend, John. Did Sirianni mention Jacob at one point?
I mean, he mentions my name, but
right.
No, I don't think he ever mentions his outlets. I could be wrong, but yeah.
I don't know. I'm just going off what Josh said in the super chat. But Josh, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Let's get to our quick live read. First thing I want to tell everybody is we got a big 2 weeks as we prep for the Super Bowl. All right. And I'm going to try and give as much back to the great people of JAKIB Nation as I possibly can. Yesterday, we got our record in super chats on the postgame show. So I'm going to go and take that and use that to pick up some more Eagles merch to give away to the great people. So we'll be doing giveaways every day for the next 2 weeks. All right. So if you're not a member, get your memberships in here on JAKIB Sports. And we appreciate each and every one of you for being here. Brandon Howard, Bobby Murphy, Jeff Martin, Flexing and Steppin, Josh B. What's up, everybody? It's good to see all you guys. Fly Parks, Niles in here, Abe's in here. We appreciate each and every one of you guys. TK, Izzy B, appreciate all you. Bird Gang Girl. We appreciate all you guys, man. So it's going to be a fun 2 weeks. I can't wait to do it and prep with all you guys for the upcoming run to the Super Bowl here. Let's get to it real quick. I'm going to give you guys a live read for BetUS, and then we'll get to our great Jeff Kerr coming up next. All right, you can see the promo code I put on your screen now. It's BetUS. Go to betus.com.pa and use this promo code. It's YouTube 150. I've been telling you it all year, and I'm curious to hear what you guys are thinking of putting on the Super Bowl. You taking the Saquon over, the Jalen Hurts over. What are you taking in this game? Go to betus.com.pa. Use the promo code YouTube150, gives you 150% sign-up bonus on your very first deposit, and you get 125% on your second and third deposit, all up to $2,000. So deposit less and bet with more at BetUS. Go to betus.com.pa. And a big thanks to them for sponsoring the 2-hour show.